All right, hello everybody, and welcome to BVB Serving Connecticut's webinar, Navigating Cybersecurity During COVID-19. My name is Luke Fry. I'm the Associate Director of Communication for BVB Serving Connecticut, and I'm going to be moderating today. I also have a great staff member, Joni Green, who's going to be helping out with her Q&A later in the broadcast. Just a reminder, everybody is in mute, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the questions box, and we will try to cover them all during our Q&A. Unfortunately, if you have called into the broadcast today, you will not be able to ask any questions at this time. Also, today's PowerPoint is available to download. If you are using your computer, you can go over to the Handouts tab and download today's slide deck. If you would like to check out any of our previous webinars, you can always go to our site. For those of you calling in, it is https://bit.ly/BBB COVID-19 webinar series. And also, if you have to leave our broadcast early today and can't stay until the end, you can always go to that site and get yourself up to date. We will also email out that link on our post-webinar email. So as our series continues, we've really been choosing topics relevant to this COVID storm we are currently in, and cybersecurity is something that small businesses may not have at the top of their mind currently. However, it really should be. So we have a great speaker today. His name is Daniel Elliott. He is the Director of Education and Strategic Initiatives at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. He has a great presentation today, and I really think you guys are going to get a lot out of it. So Daniel, I am going to turn things over to you for the time being.
Thank you so much, Luke. I really appreciate it. And it's my pleasure to be presenting with your Better Business Bureau today to support the small businesses who are in attendance. So we're going to be talking about remote security basics as more businesses, small, medium, and large, are moving to a remote work model. We have to recognize some of the security threats that are inherent in that shift. And also, I want to let you know about some of the resources that are available to you and some of the guidance that we have, some of the best practices for both employers and employees, because both have responsibilities for protecting themselves and their enterprise. And so here's my contact information. If you would like to reach out to me, my email address is just daniel@staysafeonline.org. I'm happy to answer any questions you have after this webinar. And so we can go to the next slide. There we go. So the National Cybersecurity Alliance, just to give you a little background, we're a national nonprofit focused on cybersecurity and privacy education and awareness. And so we do that through national scale campaigns. You may have participated in National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is every October. And if you have not, I encourage you to learn more about it and become a champion. We co-lead that every year. We have for the last 16 years with the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. I know it's a mouthful. We also have a campaign focused on small and medium-sized businesses called Cybersecure My Business. Actually, just yesterday, we were hosting a free webinar with the International Association of Better Business Bureaus focused on digital spring cleaning, and that recording is available on our website at staysafeonline.org. And we also lead Data Privacy Day, which for North America, which is our campaign to really focus the discussion on privacy and what organizations can do and individuals can do to protect their privacy and support privacy across the country and globe. And so those are some of our campaigns, and you can learn about all of them at staysafeonline.org. So with that out of the way, you know a little bit more about our organization. We can now dig into some of the content here. And so I outlined it for you here. We're going to start with some recommendations for employers. And actually, I left out a bullet. We're actually going to start with an overview of some of the threats that organizations are facing in face of COVID. And then we're going to go into recommendations for employers, then some recommendations for employees, and that'll leave you with some resources that you can take advantage of. So with that, let's go ahead and start with the risks that organizations are now facing in with COVID-19. So intrusions from a greater number of endpoints or entry points. So this one I've listed because now that employees are not in your physical office, they're spread out geographically. We're now starting to see a lot more intrusions and opportunities for cyber criminals to access your sensitive information because employees are using their personal devices. They're using routers in their home offices that might not be commercial grade or enterprise grade or might not be secured. And so there's so many more numbers of entry points that cyber criminals can take advantage of, and they are taking advantage of them. And we'll talk a little bit about how to minimize some of those entry points later on. Another risk that we're seeing is, of course, the uptick in COVID-19 scams. And so the Federal Trade Commission, this link here, they've put together a wonderful resource that outlines many of the scams, not only cybersecurity scams like phishing or business email compromise scams, but also scams such as telephone scams or physical scams where people are setting up fake testing sites and charging people to take a test to see if they have coronavirus or not. And so there are a lot of scams going on out there. National Cybersecurity Alliance, we have a few webinars coming up in May, both on May 5th and May 26th with the Federal Trade Commission, where we'll be highlighting some of these scams. But just keep an eye out for if something seems too good to be true, or if somebody's requesting you to click on a link or download something, that it could very potentially be a scam. And again, I'm going to talk about some of the red flags here in just a moment. Another risk that we're seeing is that employees are getting creative with technology solutions. For instance, if you have employees working from home and they need to work collaboratively, what tools are they using to work collaboratively? Have they been vetted by your information security professionals if you have someone who can vet those technologies? And so with employees getting creative, using their own solutions, we're seeing those presenting risks to organizations. We're also seeing loss of visibility as employees use personal devices. So for many organizations, they might have their networked devices, their work issue devices being monitored by an information security team, whether that's in-house or maybe your managed services provider that you've trusted as a network monitoring system or network monitoring service. And so as more employees are leaving the office and they're using their own devices, we're seeing that loss of visibility. And that is a risk that companies should understand and confront. With the increase in help desk tickets, the reason I brought this up, because we're seeing as more employees are leaving their offices and working from home, that they're issuing help desk tickets to their managed services provider or to their in-house IT teams saying, I need help with this or I need help with that. And the risk is that these help desk individuals are being overwhelmed. Again, whether you have one information security professional or IT person in your business, or whether you have a whole team, or whether you outsource all of that, just recognize that these organizations or these functions are being overwhelmed at the moment. And that presents a risk of burnout. It presents a risk of missing things. And so recognizing and showing some love to these people who are providing these technical services to your offices and understand that they are overwhelmed right now. And I talked about weak home security routers or weak home security a little bit earlier in one of these bullets, but understanding that these risks imposed by routers being configured and set up by individuals at home, physical security, what is the physical security of someone's technology assets in their home office? Can someone just walk in and pick it up and walk out? Can a child use one of these devices that an individual is working on for your work? So thinking about the home security, because it's not as rigorous as your office security is. And again, we'll talk a little bit about how to secure all those here in just a moment. And then maxing out VPN licenses or firewall capability. This one's a little more technical, but I just want you to think about some of the risks that working from home, having a distributed workforce, will place on your information technology infrastructure. So do you have enough VPN licenses or enough security software licenses in order to secure individuals so that they can access your information and your network securely? So with that, when we come to recommendations for employers, I have a little bulleted list of some of the main points that I like to cover. And the first one is establishing and communicating security policies and procedures. Do employees know what they can and can't do, right? So there's a great definition of cybersecurity from Brian Krebs, and he said it's making it easier for employees to do the right thing and harder for them to do the wrong thing. And part of that is establishing policies and procedures that employees can use to guide good behavior, to make it easier for them to do the right thing and harder for them to do the wrong thing. So for instance, use of personal devices. Can they use a personal laptop or a personal tablet to access your network? Is that allowed? What are the security levels that you have in place within your organization? And so just thinking about some of these and issuing some guidance to employees, training them on these policies and procedures, now is the best time to do that. With helping staff make a secure home office, understanding that they're going to be connecting to your network, to your sensitive business information, using their home tools. So how do you help them make a secure home office? Well, one, you help them understand how to configure their routers, update their passwords or passphrases, have them require, or you require them to have multi-factor authentication on all devices that they access your information with. And so there are a lot of tools, and you can provide them with a checklist of security tips that they can use to follow. And again, I'll cover a lot of those that you can include, and we have some on our staysafeonline.org website that you can use. With requiring use of a VPN or a virtual private network, this adds an extra layer of security when employees are connecting to your organization's network. So what we don't want really employees doing is accessing your organization's internal network using their home routers or using an unsecure network. And so requiring a use of VPN, if you're able to issue those, make them available to your staff. And many of them are reasonably priced. That's one way that you can encourage and increase the security of employees accessing your sensitive information. With continuous end user education and communication, one of the biggest pieces is to make sure that you're reminding employees to update and patch their software. Now that they're not in the office, right? If you have that one information security professional or a handful of professionals, or you have that outsourced vendor who provides your support, they may have been issuing updates or reminders for software updates when we were in kind of the regular rigmarole of business. But now that we're distributed all over the place and employees are using maybe not work issued devices, are they updating their software? Are they using two-factor authentication? And so how do we continue to educate employees on some of the scams that are being targeted? And also some of these telework best practices that we're covering here today. So it is continuous education. You don't want to inundate them with education, but you want to at least be providing a regular cadence of information that they can use to better secure themselves. And I alluded to this on one of the earlier slides with employees getting creative about what tools they're using to get their work done. So it's always a best practice, if you can, to give your remote workers the security and productivity tools they need to protect themselves. Again, if you have extra licenses for your security software, allow them to use them on their personal devices if they have to use personal devices for work as they telecommute, if you can't issue a work device, or give them a VPN to access, or allow them to have access or license to a password keeper, password vault. So thinking of some of these. Also, there's been a lot in the news about Zoom, right? Employees using Zoom and there being Zoom bombs, etc. If you don't want to use Zoom as a collaboration tool, or you don't want your employees to use that tool or any other tool, I'm not specifically going to say yes or no to using a specific technology, but what I will say is make sure you understand the risks inherent with the technologies and provide recommendations to your staff or requirements to your staff on what technologies or solutions they should be using when it comes to engaging online with telework. And then with tech support, just make sure that employees don't feel isolated out there technologically. Make sure that they know who to reach out to if they think they have a cyber incident on their home network that might impact their now work devices that are connecting to their home networks. So making sure that all employees are equipped with a thorough understanding of the technologies and solutions they should be using, of the scams and the current risks that are facing them, what they should be doing, some best practices for securing their networks, and that's what the whole next section will be. And also who to turn to if they have a technical issue. That's critically important. And so those are just some high-level recommendations for employers that would think you should be thinking about as you have already probably moved to a telework model, but as you continue to evolve your strategy for really making your model more robust and more sophisticated and streamlined. Now we have tips for employees that for some of you, even if you're an employer, these tips would be relevant. But these are pieces of information that as you help employees create a secure office at home, that you can empower them with this information. And so some of this will be almost mirrored with what we just talked about with employers. But one, employees need to know and follow their organization's telework rules and policies. Employees are very good, just like children are very good, at getting around security security standards and policies, but many times they just don't know about them. They haven't been communicated, or they're overly difficult to follow. So they need to understand that you do have policies and procedures that they should be following, and hopefully they're not overly onerous for them to follow. They also need to understand what's in your company's technology toolbox. So after you've communicated all of those technologies, maybe provide a list or a checklist of if you want to have virtual meetings, use this technology specifically because we've vetted it. Or if you want to host a webinar for not only internal employees, but external customers, you need to use this technology. Or if you're sharing files back and forth, you need to use this technology. So just let them know what's in your technology toolbox that has been vetted or approved, so that they know what they can use. Because if you don't do that, then they're going to go out and use whatever they can find, whatever's the cheapest, probably free, whatever's the easiest to use, and those might not always be the most secure. And then of course, we want to empower them to ask for help, report unusual activity, make sure they know, again, who they can turn to and what to look for if they think something has gone wrong. And so those are a few of our initial tips. I have a few more slides with some tips for employees. One of the biggest things that employees can do is secure the router. So at work, they don't have to worry about this, right? But at home, they're using their router that they went to, Best Buy or Home Depot or wherever they bought a router. I guess you probably can't buy a router at Home Depot, but wherever they bought a router, um, they need to understand that they have to secure that, particularly if they're going to be doing sensitive work transactions over that router. So one, they need to make sure they create a unique long passphrase, one that they don't share with any other devices or accounts. And usually a long passphrase is greater than 12 characters. The longer, the better is the recommendation. Length trumps complexity. With routers, and I want to add that most routers come with a manufacturer's password. And so if they don't change their routers, then anyone who purchased that brand of router, that model, has that manufacturer's password. So that's why it's so important to change the passphrase on those. Installing updates regularly. Anything practically that plugs in to the wall or connects to the internet needs to have regular updates, software updates. And so they need to make sure that their routers are updated regularly. And so they can restart them. Sometimes they might have to go to a specific website to update their router software. They need to check which type of router they use and look at their user manual, make sure they know how to update that, because that's a requirement. If we could go back to the previous slide here, there we go. Okay, so using WPA2 or WPA3. So WPA stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. And this is when they go into their settings, they need to configure their wireless network to WPA2 or WPA3. Those are the most advanced methods of securing a router. And if they have a router that does not offer these, I would probably encourage you to not allow them to access your network with their home router. But if they do have a router that they can configure to WPA2 or WPA3, I would require it or highly encourage it, because it encrypts the information that goes between the router and your network. So I would encourage you to do that and provide them maybe with a tip sheet that enables them to do so. Also, if employees have smart home devices, I would encourage them to put those devices on a guest network. One thing they shouldn't be doing is putting their work devices, all their smart home devices, all their personal devices, all on one Wi-Fi network. And so you can create segmented networks. And one way to do it is just create a guest network and put all of your wireless all of your smart devices on that separate network, and then have work on a specific one that you access, again, to segment those as much as you can. And then I had already talked about using your virtual private network or your VPN if they can, if you make it available. They can also purchase one for personal use as well. Now, one thing we often forget is about physical security. So who has access to work issued devices? In one of my previous roles, I had an employee take a work issued laptop home, and she let her son use that laptop to play games. And what happened? He downloaded something and it caused a cyber incident on her laptop. And so employees should know that work issued laptops should be used only for work, and personal devices should only be used for personal scenarios, unless they have to use personal laptops for work. In that instance, I would say make sure that you segment users on your devices, right? If you're using a personal laptop for work, they need to have an account for work, and then maybe need to have an account, specifically a login account for personal use, and maybe a login account just for children, to segment those accesses. We also need to keep it in a safe place. Who has access to your home? What if you live in a kind of a communal living space, or if you have roommates? Make sure that work issued devices or any device that you do work on are in a safe space and are secured. Also using auto timeouts and strong authentication. So auto timeouts, of course, if you walk away and you forget to lock your laptop, work issued or personal, it'll automatically do it after a certain amount of time. So we should be thinking about some of these physical security concerns because we all walk away from our laptop and forget about it. What you don't want to do is be in the middle of, doing something at work and run to the restroom and your child or spouse or whoever gets on that computer and checks something or logs into a game and introduces a vulnerability to your business. And strong authentication, again, making sure that all devices, all accounts have strong passphrases, have two-factor authentication. And two-factor authentication is using a password in combination with biometrics like your fingerprint or retinal scan or a one-time code that's sent to your phone. Microsoft did a study that said greater than 99% or almost 99% of cyber incidents could have been prevented if individuals and organizations would have enabled two-factor authentication because it adds that second level of protection between your account and an unauthorized user. With keeping devices patched and updated, again, employees need to understand that software needs to be updated on their laptops. It's easy to click postpone, and it's harder to monitor if they're updating their devices or not, particularly if they're using non-work issued devices. And so requiring, if you do require them or encourage them to use personal devices, having them update those regularly. Such as on Patch Tuesday, sending out reminders for Microsoft users. And so the goal, it really is to keep all of this telework, whether they're personal devices or work issue devices, to keep their equipment as close to office security standards as possible. And so if you have what that looks like for your work, then you just need to help them understand how to do that at home. And a lot of that probably follows some of the guidance that I have provided here in this device security slide itself. And so when we go to the next slide, a few more tips for employees. Again, I snapped a picture of this when I felt my dog was staring over my shoulder. And this is a view from my webcam. And I thought it was perfectly relevant because, who is able to look over your shoulder? And so I approach this from a few different perspectives. One, can paperwork or devices be seen from a window if you live in a city or if you live in an apartment building? If people are able to walk by and look in your office, can they see paperwork that has sensitive work information on it? Or can they see your computer screen? Maybe it's a good idea to put one of those shades on your computer screen so nobody can walk by and see it if they're outside. I know many people aren't working from cafes these days, but same goes if you're in a public space. But if you're working from home, the same still applies. Do you have ability to lock away sensitive information? When you're done with it for the day at your home office, can you lock your sensitive paperwork, contracts, whatever you're working on in a fireproof lockbox? And maybe your employer can provide you with a fireproof lockbox if you don't have it. Do you have the ability to shred sensitive information? Again, if an employer can't provide the ability to shred sensitive information, are you able to shred it on your personal shredder? And I know Better Business Bureaus do shred days, and I know that it's depending on what the Better Business Bureau in each region has planned, but you might want to reach out to your Better Business Bureau to see what their shred days are, to see what an opportunity is for that. And then I want to also add about listening devices. So many of us are bringing in all these wonderful technologies into our homes, these vacuum cleaners, these toys, these personal assistants that are listening devices. But you want to help employees understand that they probably don't want to have one of these listening capable devices in their office. Right? If they're having sensitive work conversations, the last thing you want them to do is have one of these listening devices in the room with them. And so just something to consider. And so I always encourage you to keep a safe space in your home when it comes to listening devices and monitoring devices. They shouldn't be in children's bedrooms. They probably shouldn't be in your own bedroom. They probably shouldn't be in offices where you do work or spaces where you do work. And so just thinking about the physical location of some of these devices. So when in doubt, throw it out. So even I talked about there are a lot of scams going on with COVID-19, the coronavirus. And still, though, one thing has not changed, and that's the primary vehicle for cyber criminals getting into your accounts is through email. Greater than 92% of cybersecurity incidents begin with email. Some reports say greater than 97% of cyber incidents begin with an email. So, the fact of the matter is, cyber criminals know that email works. And so with that, if an email looks suspicious, even if you know the source, it's best to delete it. So often when there's a sense of an urgency or somebody's requesting you to download something that you didn't ask them to send you or you weren't expecting, or someone's requesting you to bypass policy. So this often happens in business email compromise, where a cyber criminal will email an employee saying, I need you to, not verify this. I need you to wire transfer this X amount of money to me right now. And we're in a rush and I need you to do it. And so if they're asking you to bypass policy or if they're asking you to transfer money, it's always good to verify to clarify. What we mean by that is pick up the phone and call them and not use the phone number that they include in the email. Use a trusted phone number that you can call to verify the legitimacy of their request. Also, training employees on what to look for in suspicious email. Different industries have different types of threats. And so again, it's, misspelling is still a common feature of a phishing exploit, but it's really not the only thing to look for because they're getting so sophisticated. Making sure that they understand if there's a link that's unsolicited, or checking to make sure if the link that's included in the email is actually going where it says it's going, or verifying that the return email address is actually from the sender. Google recently issued a free phishing quiz that you can use if you don't have a sophisticated training budget for training your employees. This is a free tool. It's actually pretty hard. So I encourage you to check it out. And you can have employees go through it as part of an online lunch and learn or virtual lunch and learn with them. And then Adobe and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, we just pushed out a phishing and ransomware video. It's really lighthearted and funny, but again, it's something you can use if you don't have a robust training awareness budget or library. These are tools that you can use for free to train your employees and to raise their awareness. And so a few resources I want to provide you with, just so you're aware. The National Cybersecurity Alliance created the COVID-19 Security Resource Library back in, I think it was February when all of this started. We started seeing a lot of resources being pushed out from private sector, nonprofits, public sector. And so we started assembling those resources. In one column, it's how do you avoid cyber threats and scams. And the second one is remote working. So we have a lot of resources in this list that you can use to educate your employees on teleworking best practices. And lastly, the government assistance. And so some of the information that our partners at IRS and SBA have put together to support the business community. We just wanted you to be aware of it. They're not cybersecurity specific. Many of the first two columns are, but we just wanted you to have access to some of these resources that our partners in the federal government are putting together for you. Some very specific ones I want to direct you to. The Federal Trade Commission put together and are regularly updating this coronavirus scams webpage. I encourage you to check it out and let your employees know about some of these scams so that they can be more vigilant and know when to raise the red flag, if they think they've been a victim of a scam. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has their cisa.gov/coronavirus website. A lot of great resources on not only cybersecurity, but supply chain security, etc. So if you're looking for that, I encourage you to check out, or if you're looking for more information on those topics, CISA has a great resource. And then the National Institute of Standards and Technology has put out two really easy to understand basic resources for employees. One's preventing eavesdropping and protecting privacy on virtual meetings, which has been a big concern recently, rightfully so. And then the telework security best practices, both again are non-technical. They're easy to understand from many different audiences. And these are other tools that you can add to your toolbox when you're training your employees or when you do your virtual meetings with them weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. You can include some of these tips because the more educated they are, the more secure your organization is going to be. It is every individual's responsibility in an organization to protect that organization. And they need to understand that as employees, and you need to understand that as employers. And so what you have to do is not just tell them it's their responsibility to be cyber secure or to secure their home networks, but you have to give them guidance on what to do specifically. And so these resources and what we've covered today hopefully give you some of those tools that you can include in those conversations or in those blog posts or one-pagers that you send out to them. Because again, it is securing your organization. When we look at threats facing businesses of all types, natural disasters, global warming or climate change, I'm sorry, and cybersecurity typically are the top 3 rated threats to businesses of all sizes. And we're seeing that today. We're seeing this natural disaster of a pandemic married with cyber criminals taking advantage of the pandemic, because now that so many people are working from home and all these vulnerabilities are opened up. And so we're getting hit by both a natural disaster and a cyber attack. And to be honest, that happens all the time. Cyber criminals always take advantage of natural disasters. Every time a hurricane hits, the amount of scams and cyber attacks go up related to that hurricane or tornado or whatever it is. And so it's no different with this pandemic. And so the more educated your employees are, the more secure your organization will be. And I think I might have one more slide. That's a blank slide. Let's go to the next one, maybe. I guess I gave you a bonus slide.
There we go.
There we go. So the last thing I want to leave you with is the National Cybersecurity Alliance has a series of free webinars. As I said yesterday, we were on with the Better Business Bureau. Coming up on May 5th or April 21st, we're going to be talking about e-commerce security as more businesses, of course, are shifting from foot traffic to e-commerce and mobile payment devices. We'll be talking about some of the security related to those. Again, we'll have the Federal Trade Commission and some experts from Trend Micro and Generali Global Assistance talking about some of those scams that we're seeing across the country. And then on May 12th, we'll be talking about phishing, vishing, and smishing. So cyber threats that are specific to email, cyber threats that come through telephone, and cyber threats that are coming through text message. And so wanting to be aware of some of these threats and how you can hopefully reduce your chances of falling victim to them. And so those are all available on the staysafeonline.org website and are free and open to the public. And so I think the last slide is just with my contact information. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions. We've left plenty of time at the end. Luke, I'm guessing you'll facilitate that part of it.
Sure, yes. I don't believe we have any questions currently, but the only question I would have or ask you to kind of drive home is, what is the best advice you would give to a small business owner who maybe has, 2 to 3 employees, always has consumers emailing them possibly attachments or calling? What is that one thing you would really ask them to be aware of or kind of avoid through a time like this?
Well, oh, yes, the first thing I would say automatically is make sure you're training employees on how to identify malicious emails or suspicious emails. So many times we give employees access to email without training them on email security. Why is that? Because we think that the prior employer has trained them on email security, or we think that just because they know how to use email, that they know how to do it securely, whatever it is. The biggest
Yeah.
piece of it, since email is greater than 92% of the way that cyber criminals get into a business or get into a home network, they have to first understand how to identify a malicious email. Um, and so that's why I provided those specific resources to help do so. Um, and then beyond that, training, or beyond training them on email security, really fortifying their accounts with two-factor authentication, and updating their software. Those are the three. I know you asked for one, but I would really
That's
stick
okay.
to three. Updating your software, enabling two-factor authentication, and being trained on email, identifying malicious email or suspicious email. Those three, I think, are so important and go so far in protecting organizations and individuals. Now, nothing's a silver bullet, but I would also add that those three are free most of the time. It's usually free to update your software. It's usually free to enable two-factor authentication. And so it's not that difficult for employers um, to do this, to secure their organizations, and for employees to do that, to secure their accounts and devices.
And that's a great point too, to any person who does have a small business, again, only around 2 employees possibly, and might not have that IT person that some larger company may have. So I also enjoy the point that those are all free things that you can kind of do to help protect you, your employees, and your business. So I appreciate all of your time today, Daniel. I don't believe we have any other questions. Again, I appreciated you taking time out of your day to help educate our ABs and owners across Connecticut to sort of learn a couple of these cybersecurity basics while almost all of us are at home trying to work in a completely new way. So I appreciate it again. And if anybody has any other questions, you can always reach out to BBB or Daniel as well. And I also have that link to our bbb.org site about previous broadcasts. We are going to be posting the video of this webinar on that site later today. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.